Hello, hello. Welcome to Courage Becomes Her, where we connect and share real life stories. I'll talk with women whom I love and am inspired by, women who are experiencing life just like you and me. I'm excited for us to gather together and cultivate confidence, courage, and joy in life and work.
Things are flying at you and it's like you're just in this big, huge hailstorm and the wind's whipping around you. And it's those moments, when you're in those moments, you need to step away and you need to stop and just focus on something else and just know that it's going to be okay that you've had to step away, because that's when I've gained even more insight when I've done that. And I did that recently, and I just started thinking about something else and focusing on something else that was completely unrelated to my business. But I knew I needed to, because I felt like I was caught up in a storm that wasn't my making, but yet it was.
That was Jodie Boggess. I am so excited for today's conversation with Jodie. It is just filled with passion and wisdom. Jodie is a wife and an empty nester mom and a puppy mom, which you'll hear more about in our conversation. She has a background in higher education career services, as well as leadership development for Chick-fil-A, and also has owned her own business before. In today's conversation, we're going to talk about new beginnings and transition. And she has quite a few of them that have taken place for her. Some that have been a season of loss and grief, and others that have just been navigating newness of moving to a new state and a new community, and being in this season of no longer having her girls at home, and choosing to start a new business amidst all of this, and the recognition that it was really time for her to use her gifts and to live in the purpose that she was created for. So we talk a lot about just what it looks like to be entrepreneurial and to start something new, while also navigating transition of a new community and navigating loneliness and building friendships, and just all of the life things that come with new beginnings and transition. So join me for this beautiful and lovely conversation today with Jodie. Jodie, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to Courage Becomes Her.
I'm so excited to be here with you, Laurel. I just love chatting with you. This is awesome. I'm so happy for you to be doing this too.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. You're such an encouragement, and I'm so delighted to have you join me today. So I want for us to talk today about the transition to entrepreneurial life, which really you've kind of done this before, so you're not entirely new, if you will, to the entrepreneurial world. But let's maybe just start a little bit by you sharing at this season, like what caused you to decide that you wanted to do a new venture? Like what was the decision point or the deciding factor in jumping into something definitely risky and certainly courageous?
Wow. Okay. So for me, I have an entrepreneurial spirit at heart. And so my husband has a pretty demanding career. And so for me, my heart is that of being kind of a caretaker. I love being at home. I love being able to, when my girls were growing up, to be able to be at home with them. And then, just kind of take care of things around the house. And owning my own business always has just worked the best for our family. And so this last go around, my husband had been recruited to South Carolina, and kind of, I was at this point where our youngest was, in college, our oldest was graduated, she was on her own and, doing her adulting, as she likes to say. And the last 5 years have, just were kind of a time of, some heavy grief with the loss of my husband's parents, relatively unexpectedly, and just kind of some other heavy things, and also some good stuff too that was going on, with the youngest being established in college. There was that loss, and and then just being busy with moving into our house and, having such a big move with that, I put myself on the back burner. And the climatic moment for me was, my husband has always dreamed of having a Harley Davidson motorcycle. Just, it's always been his thing. And so as he was pulling out of the parking lot with it, and I'm following him home, it just hit me right there. And I really feel like that was God just, really talking to me that, what am I doing for myself? And that's not in a selfish way, but just, I was a little bit jealous of my husband. I was a little bit angry, like, well, why does he get to do that? I don't do anything for myself. And my husband's response would be, well, what do you want to do? I mean, he's very supportive, right? So I think for me, it just was, I had started, this career coaching business. I've always worked with youth in some way, whether it's professionally or as on a volunteer basis. And I've worked in a career coaching role, in higher education. And it just hit that it's like, what, I felt the calling to do it. And that moment was the kick in the butt that I needed to move forward. And you probably remember that's when I reached out to you. Your information came across to me at about that same time because I knew I needed some help to do it. I just felt like I was flailing and I was just kind of all over the board, and I just needed someone to listen. And so that's, and just kind of helped me think through things. And so that's kind of when that, started. It kind of I've been playing around with a little bit, but it was that moment that it was like, all right, it's time to get serious about this and do something for yourself.
I love that. What is so fascinating to me, though, in your story and in what you share is that rather than just going and volunteering somewhere or joining different civic groups or clubs or women's groups or, a whole variety of other things that you could have chosen, that moving into a place of actively working, having, something that is revenue producing and, has goals associated with it and is a lot of hard work, that was your choice rather than, the easier things, if you will, of, volunteering or groups or, that sort of thing. So did that cross your mind at all of like, choosing the much more difficult, in my opinion, at that season?
It has crossed my mind, and it still kind of does, of putting myself out there and pursuing those sorts of opportunities. But it did, but it's just, that's not as fulfilling to me. And I also go back to, what am I being called to do, and really, really focusing on where God wants me, what his purpose is for my life, and really just trying to focus in on that and listen. And that's a journey in itself, of that piece of it. But it just didn't feel like that was, I would look and it just, nothing like just felt good in my heart and in my stomach with that. I would meet with a couple of people and I didn't get that vibe. So yeah.
That is so beautiful to have that discernment. And that's a hard thing to do. And one, to just have that level of discernment and to be able to figure that out. And then two, to actually, act on it and listen to it and heed, what your spirit is saying. So I just love that so much. I think you've said it a little bit already, but in previous conversations, you and I have talked a lot about just this idea for you of really feeling like young people are a ministry for you, and basically like having this opportunity through the times when you worked in the universities, when you were a leadership development for Chick-fil-A, those aspects of your life of just really being able to nurture young people in their growth and their development. So maybe just chat a little bit more about like that, like how those components kind of came together for you versus, focusing on some other aspect of, career coaching.
That's a good question. So I'm going to go back to my faith of that we're all called to a purpose. And I feel like I enjoy writing, and I've always had a fascination with different jobs, different roles, different, companies. I mean, just since I was a little girl, it's like, what do you do for a living? I mean, I can just remember always asking these questions. My parents sometimes would get a little embarrassed, like, but he just always was curious. And so I think that for me, youth, I think this could be a really long answer, but I feel like there's just so much pressure out there. And, when I was growing up, certainly I had pressure too. I mean, pressure is not anything new by all means, but, there's this whole plethora of opportunities, and, there's this, pressure, focus on maybe you're supposed to go to 4-year university, or, that's the only way you can go. But at the end of the day, it's, we were all created for a purpose, and we were all given gifts and talents, and we are called to share them. And so for me, the ministry part comes in of that's how I help is, so if there's something that a student is interested in going into, it's doing some career exploration. What are some opportunities with that passion of yours, that drive? Because, it does come from that, our heart of like, oh, wow, that really interests me. And, kind of taking that, something that interests me. Well, it interests you because I believe it was planted in your heart, that was there. And then just help guiding them on that path to finding an opportunity. What is out there for them to do with that interest? What does that look like? And how do they tell their story? How do they build their experience? How do they get themselves into that position? And then, of course, once they've obtained the required education for it, then how do they go on from there? Some of the research I've been doing, I've been noticing that a lot of higher education facilities, that they're noticing a disengagement with career services. And so that baffles my mind a little bit and concerns me, because I think that some students they're just trying to get through school. Yeah. Getting through their education requirements. Yeah. But I'm like, are you not dreaming? Are you not thinking about, I mean, that's the fun part of being where you're at in your life is, thinking about that and, okay, how do I get, and not that all students are like that, but a lot of them are. And so just being able to step in. I hope that answers that question.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, your passion for young people is just so inspiring and beautiful, and obviously is something that is, a unique calling for you, because not everybody has that. I want to go back to what you said about my words, not exactly how you said it, but basically you having a spirit of curiosity. So that was something you've had since you were a child, as you said, and now, you use it in, this entrepreneurial endeavor and business that you have built over the last couple of years. So how, if you were to go back at all, how would you help someone? And I think it speaks to, kind of what you just said about the students and kind of the attitude or perspective that there is right now. How do you help someone to develop that spirit of curiosity and, and want to dream and to engage and to, explore?
I think that because I'm an objective person in their life, in most cases, I'm not related, I'm not the parent. And so it's giving them that permission to dream without the pressure of, well, my parents, they always saw me going into this and doing this. And so just, really giving them permission to think about what they have. I don't really have a formal procedure for each student. It just depends. And so when I do talk with them, and if they are at that exploration, they're not quite sure, or maybe it's they pursued a path, and now they're at that point of now they have to pursue graduate school, but they're not sure that's really what they want to do anymore. So now what do we do? But just, I think just giving that permission to dream and to, have discussions and know that it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to dream big. And I think that's kind of a big part.
Yeah.
I think because I've had enough life experience behind me too, I know that things, while sometimes during it, you're going through it, it doesn't feel good, it doesn't feel right, and it feels like it's the end of the world. I can say from my standpoint, it's going to be okay. And you'll learn that that door didn't open for a reason because this other door was meant to open.
Yeah.
But it's hard for, they're going through this. So it's hard for them to understand that.
Yes. Yeah, totally agreed. And I think what's interesting about that is you see that for the young people that you work with. I see that in the women who I work with and men as well, whom I've worked with over the years, as, grown adults still needing to give themselves that permission to dream and to change their mind and to, explore something new. So that to me is just gold, that we all need to, give ourselves that permission. So I love that so much.
Absolutely, because I think I've shared with you before, one of the books that just was instrumental in knocking me on the head with that is The Circle Maker by Mark Batterson. I think I read that book. I want to reread it. But that book it's like really made me think about, praying circles around it, but also just that point of, yes, it may seem impossible, but there's a whole reason why it's impossible, because we need his help in it. But anyway,
that's right. That's
kind of when it hit me that it's okay to think big. It's okay to dream. And I will be honest, it still is a struggle with me. And it's something that I journey through myself. So I think by helping my students, that it just reaffirms for me. It's like, yeah, that's a good reminder for me too, to kind of check in.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. So true. No, I, in my coaching, absolutely learn so much and reaffirm things in myself when I'm working with a client on a particular area, for sure. So kind of going back to your journey, one of the things that you and I have talked about, and you've experienced this before, but being newer in the community that you're living in, of just having, relocated there in the last couple of years, kind of that loneliness factor has come into play, both from new community as well as the entrepreneurial world in general can be very isolating, of all of us, just as individuals working from our homes on a screen or on a phone, all day long. So talk just a little bit about how you have navigated and kind of dealt with that lonely factor.
Oh, I'll be honest, it's something I still deal with. Yeah. But some things that I do is, it helps that we have technology that it allows us to have virtual conversations, for sure.
Yeah.
But that face to face. And so practice what I preach with my students about getting myself comfortable with being uncomfortable and researching networking groups and trying them out. There's a great HR, it's not SHRM, it's a different HR group in Greenville called HR Hot Seat. And that's been a fun group to be a part of. I'm not in an HR role, but it helps me see what sorts of, challenges that the HR realm is facing so that I can help prepare students. And then inviting people to meet me for coffee. Like, let's go, instead of waiting for someone to come to me, for me to, initiate the invite. And I also think too, one thing I've realized is not to be as set in my ways, because I'm very comfortable I have my circle of friends who've been lifelong friends, friends I've known for even in the last 5 years who are just very close, but to not limit myself to that circle of friends. Like, that's my nucleus right there. But to open myself up to other friendships and to not be so, I don't want to say judgy is not the right word, but not compare. right? Each person brings their own personality, and maybe it's a new personality or character trait that I'm dealing with, but just to be a little more open-minded, I think, with that, and not so kind of set in my ways.
Yeah.
I've had to readjust that. So
yeah. Well, and you have been so intentional, which I've really appreciated, and have been open about it, because I think that's one of those areas where women especially, and I don't have children, so I kind of have a little bit of that empty nest like you do, so to speak. But I think we can get into that pity party place of being, like a woe is me, like I don't have any friends, that sort of a thing. I think it's easy to go there when, you're not in a place where you've still got kids at home, or you're surrounded with friends because of, the years of your kids growing up and that sort of thing. So you have done a great job of working through the potential of a pity party and really like going out and, looking for those relationships and those opportunities to connect with others. So I've really appreciated that about you. Courage Becomes Her is brought to you in part by my coaching, Laurel Emery and Company. I'm so grateful that you've been tuning in to Courage Becomes Her for these last handful of weeks. And I want to let you know that I've received feedback on 2 different areas that we're going to talk about in some upcoming episodes. So first and foremost, I've gotten a lot of feedback and questions about what is coaching and why would I hire a coach and what does it look like to be in a coaching relationship. So I will be doing an episode in November to talk about that. Additionally, quite a few of you have commented that hearing some of the stories of these other women have been triggering to you, that they've triggered emotions in you and really kind of brought to the surface some insecurities and or fears or doubts that you have about yourself as a result of listening to other women's stories. So also in November, I'm going to be talking and doing an episode about what it looks like to navigate triggers when we hear other people's stories and what to do with those. So I appreciate the feedback and I appreciate you listening to the episodes thus far and sharing them with other women who would be encouraged or inspired or helped through these stories. Thank you.
I have to say too that something I've noticed is that, when we moved into a new community when our youngest was getting ready to start high school. And so having kids in school does help because you do meet other parents. But one thing I would notice is that those parents had their circle of friends. And so it wasn't always an inclusive welcome per se. And it was never anything to be mean. It wasn't intentionally to be mean or snub. It just, they've not been in the shoes that I've walked in where they're brand new to a community and they're trying to meet people. So I also have learned, because I've been in that situation, to try to recognize if someone's new in the area to, okay, how can I be a point of welcome? But I have experienced a lot, and that makes it tough because I think sometimes too, my natural reaction, and I think others would say this too, is that you kind of feel this sense of rejection. And so you just don't want to try. It's like, I'm not even going to try anymore. I'm not going there. And it's easy to get in that place of just not trying because it's safer. It's easy to be safe.
Yeah. Wow. That's so good. So good. I appreciate that. So how, for those of us who do get into that space, and obviously, as you said, you've been there, how do you push through that?
Well, I've sat and I've cried. I think that just sat in prayer about it. At the time, my faith wasn't as strong as it is now, but to look at it from a different perspective. And like I said, look at it from, I don't think it's intentional when you feel that rejection, unless somebody actually said something to you.
Sure.
But to just, keep trying. And I think for me, I just would accept that this group of women or this particular person was not going to be real inclusive and welcoming, and just to let that go and stop trying. And then open my eyes up to other opportunities.
That's so good.
And eventually you find it. But like I said earlier, it's still a work in progress for me. My nucleus of friends are still pretty much not in South Carolina.
Right.
My social, like, hey, let's go shopping or let's go do this. So
Yeah. Such a difficult part.
So for those out there who may feel the same way, I think just keep trying. So
yeah, that's really, really good. So kind of back to the entrepreneurial life. So as we talked about, like this is your, second really big time in life of, kind of starting a business on your own and moving forward with an idea, with a business idea. Give us kind of maybe your one or two top tips for, making that a successful journey. And obviously we each define success differently, but, what has been most helpful to you in that?
Being organized, having some sort of plan, and do your research. So for me, doing my research, having a vision, but not being so set in that vision that I can't alter the course.
Yeah.
Because I think it's easier for me to adjust my course. I've learned this about me versus this was the goal. I have to keep moving it. But I think that things kind of come in the way that teach me some lessons and give me some insight, and I learn and I think, oh, or I see that the need has changed, that there needs to be more focus of this in preparing students for career readiness. And it not necessarily isn't this piece, it's kind of more this piece. So off the top of my head, those are the two things of being organized. And if that's, knowing what your gifts are in the business and where you can bring in others to help. And you've been so helpful in introducing me to Rachel, who has helped me. She's taken on some things that would take me a long time to do. I could do it, but it's a waste of my time.
Right. Yeah. So
recognizing that it's okay to get help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's so
There's
good.
more than two things, Laurel.
That's okay. Those are really good ones. And yes, I 100% agree of, figuring out what are the things that only you can do, or that, really are those core elements for you, and keeping your focus on those, and then delegating or outsourcing other components, like to a virtual assistant. Absolutely phenomenal, and something all of us in the entrepreneur life should do.
For sure. Can I add another thing I was thinking of? So giving yourself permission to hit the reset button. So I kind of talked a little bit about how your course may change, but to remember that this is to own your idea, your vision, and to give yourself permission to step away, because it's so easy to just get all in, and that is your only focus is just this business and how you see it's going, and it's just like this quick speed, and things are flying at you, and it's like you're just in this big huge hailstorm, and the wind's whipping around you. And it's those moments, when you're in those moments, you need to step away, and you need to stop and just focus on something else, and just know that it's going to be okay that you've had to step away, because that's when I've gained even more insight, when I've done that. And I did that recently, and I just started thinking about something else and focusing on something else that was completely unrelated to my business. But I knew I needed to, because I felt like I was caught up in a storm that wasn't my making, but yet it was. So
that's so good. Yep. I love that. We all need to do that from time to time, and just shift our focus or shift our energy from one thing to another, and just give ourselves, some breathing room. So I love that. So good. Anything else that you would share to those who are either on the entrepreneurial journey or considering it, from your journey that you've learned?
Just to be you. I think it's, and you and I have talked about this before, I think it's very easy to get caught up in what I call the pull and told. You know, we're pulled here, we're told we should be doing this. You know, there's a lot of influencers out there that have had great success and share tips and what's helped them to become successful. And there are those that are out there that, well, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. And just to be careful with that, because come back to being who you're called to be and what feels right for you, and having those conversations with others like yourself as sounding boards about that, you know, kind of getting back to your roots and staying true to your roots, because there's so much out there. So
yeah,
it's it can get overwhelming.
Yeah, that's so good. And it makes so much sense. And we all see it, like, and, you know, even whether it's in ourselves or in other people, of when we're, you know, trying to just fit ourselves into a formula or a mold that someone else has created, rather than doing, you know, what is uniquely us. So I love that so much. Okay, so I'd like to do some rapid fire questions with you and some get to know you questions a little bit.
Oh boy, okay.
So you talked about The Circle Maker. I know you love books just like I do. So you talked about that one. Is there another book that you would say that has transformed your life, or is that the number one?
Definitely another one, and it's the one that you shared with me because I really like Mark Batterson. So In the Pit with a Lion on a Snow Day, boy, that talks about courage.
Yeah.
And that's another book that I get so caught up in reading all these other books that is my pile of books that I want to revisit and read again. But definitely that one, highly recommend it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. So, I need to want to reread that one again, because it is just so incredible. It will light a fire under you and give you that courage for sure. So thank you. I love that one. Something you and I haven't talked a lot about, little bits here and there, but tell us what your Enneagram type is, if you know it, and your love language.
Okay, so Enneagram, I don't know the exact number, but I just know I fall into the people pleaser category. That's I'm not sure what number that is, but I know that there's a number that revolves around if you're more of a people pleaser. So
yeah, I think when you and I talked a little bit about it before, is a 9, I think is what we decided that you are more closely with. And that's like the peacemaker, the, you know, conflict resolution, you know, conflict avoider as well. So yeah. And I didn't hear you say again what you said your love language is.
Gift giving.
Yeah. And receiving as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. What's a current obsession of yours right now? Kind of any genre, food, show, product, app, podcast?
Oh goodness. I feel like I've got some irons in the fire in a few different areas. I don't necessarily have one in particular. I guess right now one thing I would say is that it just kind of focused on things that fuel me, be more intentional about spending my time on things that fuel me versus time away. So I'm reading Beth Moore's book, Insecurity, You're a Bad Friend. And I'll tell you what, it's a good book. It's a good read. She's a good writer. And I think that there's a little piece in that book that we all can relate to. It's geared more towards women, but I certainly, you know, men can relate to it too, because she talks about that in the book too.
She does. Yeah.
And then I'm reading the Old Testament, and that's just kind of been something new I've been doing. I'm now in the book of Leviticus, and that's been good, because when I talked earlier about my reset, I just open up the Bible and I start reading the book of Genesis, and talk about when you have that moment and you're feeling just overwhelmed. Boy, just opening up to that first chapter really just calms the blood pressure and just kind of brings back just the simplicity of some things, right? That how we can just easily get very overwhelmed. But And I love cooking, so I love cookbooks, and I could name my top, but I won't, but yeah.
Okay. I love that. So good. What has either made you laugh or filled your cup, metaphorically speaking, in the last day or so?
We have a almost 7-month old lab that she's our fourth lab. And you know what? Like every other dog has her own personality. And we have spent a lot of time laughing at her.
Yep. I love seeing your pictures and your stories of her. She's a pretty cute little one. And puppies and kittens do have a way of doing that.
Yeah.
Super fun. I love that. What is the best movie and or show that you've seen in the last 12 months?
Oh, the new Top Gun Maverick.
Oh, okay. I still haven't actually seen that yet, but yeah, obviously that was very highly rated and acclaimed for sure.
It's very good. Very good. So it also, I don't want to give too much away, but it really does kind of go back to the time of, I mean, when you see the story, you'll understand this, but just, that fighter pilot versus drone warfare, and just that kind of going back to sometimes the way we used to do things are just as effective as, new and exciting ways. So, no matter what in life, just to always remember that, don't let quote unquote old way of doing things get too far away and be kind of locked in a box. So
got it. Yeah.
It was good. It was a very well done movie. So I will shout out to that one.
Thank you. Good. Yeah. And very good principle for sure. I appreciate that very much. Okay. What was the first concert you ever went to?
I'm just trying to think of the name, and I can't think of their name. So I'll say U2. That was I was the big 80s alternative girl. Still am. That still is my favorite music to listen to. But yeah, it was U2, and we were like fifth row on the floor. I don't know how we scored those seats, but it was a spectacular concert. So yeah.
That's so cool. I've never seen them in concert, but I have heard that they give a pretty incredible show. So do a pretty good concert.
They were good. They were
wonderful. Good. Well, thank you. Appreciate getting to know you through those questions.
Good questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your insights. I appreciate it very much, and so grateful to have you with us today.
Truly my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I am so inspired by the conversation with Jodie and by her passion for young people. Isn't it just so beautiful? And it really shows me how important it is for each of us to identify what it is that we have been called to, and that purpose and that gift that is unique to us and that allows us to live in a place where we have a fulfilling life and a fulfilling career. Jodie definitely just models that so beautifully, but then she also teaches young people how to find that for themselves as well. And I want to let you in on a little secret. She and I didn't talk about it, but she also does the same thing for adults, particularly those who are in some sort of a career transition, who are needing someone to kind of help them to navigate that career change, whether they're going to a new industry or even, an entirely new role or different area of expertise. So reach out to Jodie for that, and she will be a great guide and really to help breathe life into you as you go through a transition like that. I'm so grateful for the part of our conversation today where we talked about loneliness and making friends as adults. I think there is something that is just so rich about the words that she spoke, and knowing that she still is in the messy middle of it and navigating that. And it's something that, especially for empty nesters and for those who don't have children, can be much more difficult because you don't have that automatic, easy community, built-in community because of activities that your kids are doing. So I just really love and appreciate her vulnerability and the things that she has tried and just allowing herself to experience the emotions and feel the emotions of that season. So what just an absolutely lovely conversation with Jodie today. I want to leave you with thinking about what we talked about of, are you being true to you? Are you staying true to you and living true to yourself? So thanks so much for joining me in this great and beautiful conversation with Jodie today. What an honor to help you to cultivate confidence, courage, and joy in your life and work. Thank you so much for inviting me to journey with you. I look forward to being back with you next week, where we'll hear another story from a woman whom I love and am inspired by and look forward to learning from.